So we're today with Alfredo Lopez. He is now a history teacher, eighth grade history teacher, but he has a pretty interesting past that some people might say is fake. Some people might say this is the stuff we've been taught to be afraid of since we were kids. Some people might say this is some stuff you don't even mess with, man.
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself before the history, Alfredo. Right?
Um, well, I joined the Highway Patrol in 1988. I had taught for a couple of years, but I was single, and in the back of my mind, I had always had two things in life I wanted to do: was either play pro baseball, and I played a lot of years, but I just didn't have the size at the time, and I just couldn't afford to go away to school. And I had some few minor scholarship offered, nothing major. So the next thing for me was to be a police officer. I began applying in 87, 88, and then finally got accepted. And I went to the CHP Academy in September of 1988. And so I spent 6 months there in what is a paramilitary type boot camp at the time, where you live there, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, going to bed 11 o'clock at night for 6 months. So I spent almost 15 years with the Highway Patrol. And during that time, I saw more things than I ever thought I would see. I was involved in more things than I ever thought I would be involved in. And for some people, I probably was involved and saw more things than anybody should have to see. From just minor incidents to dead babies that I had to cover up from traffic accidents, to completely incinerated bodies from traffic accidents, and suicidal people who jumped off bridges, ran out into the freeway in front of big rigs, which basically blew up their body. And I went to about 7 suicides. So, yeah, that was my previous life. And after sustaining some serious injuries, um, it was time that I walked away. It was kind of an ugly departure, but it was one that had to happen nonetheless. And I still had my teaching credentials, so I got back into teaching.
Nice. Now, were you on that for life credential that they used to give people?
Actually, yes, it was. All I have to do now, because I'm so old, is that when I was able to get what they call the 5-year credential, it's almost like a lifetime. Every 5 years, I spend $65. I send them a check, and it's renewed for 5 more years. And that's all I have to do till I don't want it anymore. And even then, if I ran past the deadline, I just have to send 65, and they will give it back to me.
You get that benefit of the doubt
Yes,
extension fee.
exactly. And some people look at it as just, well, they want the money. Well, that's fine. I don't really care. I
Right?
send the $65. I get my credential. It just re-ups it, just renews. It's all it does. And
Yes,
that's what I recently did.
$65 versus the thousands of dollars you spend
Exactly.
now going through school, getting your tests that you
Yep.
have to do. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I don't have to do any of that anymore.
sounds a little easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a highway patrol, I would imagine you're seeing crazy stuff. I mean, I have a few friends that are in like law enforcement and stuff, um, but you're people think highway patrols, they're just the dicks that sit on the side of the highway, um, which I think sometimes you do have those guys that are just
Yes.
out there trying to get people. But for the most part, you guys are dealing with big wrecks. You
Yes.
guys are dealing with, those cars that flip off the
Oh, yeah.
freeway. If you think of places like Northern California that has all the mountains, you guys are dealing with people that go off the road. Um,
And
Hit
here,
center dividers. That's some pretty intense shit, man.
and here in Bakersfield, we have the Kern River. So, State Route 178, which goes through the canyon. I don't know how many where I worked in there where either they hit the wall, these huge boulders, and those boulders don't move, or they go off and down the embankment into the Kern River, and those are grinders because those cars usually overturn, and you got bodies inside, and they just get smashed on the rocks. So yeah, and then you get those concrete dividers on the freeway now, and those don't move either. The cars just collapse, and the cars they pretty much get accordioned into those things, and anybody inside. I mean, it's sometimes you don't even know what was inside.
Yeah, me and my friend Jacob were going down to Pismo one year, and on the what is it 33
Hmm.
um, through Kuyama.
Yeah, well, there's 166 and then 133 is right in there. But 166 is the one that takes you to Pismo.
Okay, well, we were going down that way, and then we ended up uh, to this traffic jam. We're just like, what the hell's going on? And we get out of the car because it looked like it was going to be one of those for a long time
Yeah.
things. So we get out of the car and we're with his mother and his sister at the time, and we're like, well, you guys just hang out here. We're gonna go, be
Looky
what
loose.
16, 17-year-old boys. We're gonna go exploring. So we climb up this little mountain. We see that the traffic jam goes pretty far up, um, and we were just like, man, there's no end to that. Well, eventually the traffic started moving, and when we pulled up next to the wreck that it was, in the car, it was a semi truck and a small, probably Nissan or Toyota, one of the
Hmm.
small compact cars. And yeah, dude, the car was a trunk,
Hmm.
and the semi truck was kind of just split down the middle.
Hmm.
And I can't imagine you
Yeah.
surviving that, man. That's a lot of weight and a lot of
Yeah, and you have to
metal.
when you get to the accident scene, you got to look inside and try and figure out how many were in the vehicle. And there's times where you have no idea. Car is just completely smashed, and you're trying to figure out, as graphic as it seems, you just have body parts, and you're trying to figure out and determine was this okay? We know there's an adult probably driving, but we see a small tennis shoe, which appears to be of a child, or we see a part of a car seat. So now you're figuring, is there a baby involved? And yet you just have flesh everywhere because they pretty much exploded inside the vehicle. And you've got to make determinations. You got to actually call relatives sometimes and, hey, so this is who we are, and we're trying to determine when she left, your home, who was in the vehicle, and then you try and figure it out because sometimes you can't tell, and sometimes the car will go up in flames. So now you have pretty much burnt up flesh, and so now you're dealing with body parts and the insides of bodies, and then it's burnt up, and then there's blood everywhere, and the smell, and it's pretty. I mean, those what we would call. It's more of a cop. It's not so much cop humor, but those are just meat grinders, and that's what they're called because that's exactly what they are. And you have no idea, and it could be hours before they pull the car apart a little bit. And I mean, I've been to scenes where you get tow trucks and they have to hook up on each side of the car and try and pull the car apart to try and so you can look inside and then try and determine what was and who was inside the car because you can't tell just by looking at it what was in the car.
And do you guys have like special cleanup crews that have to come out there
Oh yeah.
and kind of like sanitize the road or whatever it
Well,
is?
usually the fire department will sanitize and wash it down, and then you call the coroners, and they got to come out and it. Some people think, well, the highway patrol, they're pretty gruesome guys that they got to do all that, but actually, the ones that can be really gruesome are the coroners, investigators, because they got to come out and put what is left in bags, and then put them inside a body bag and try and determine identification.
And like you said, it's not always one
Yeah.
full body.
Oh yeah, it's
That's
it's parts of this, parts of that, and put them in the bags, and then later they got to take it all out and separate it, and almost it's like a human puzzle, trying to figure out what belongs to who.
So, aside from all the crazy stuff that you see and you experience, I know you've told me about some pretty intense stuff that
Hmm.
happened to you, which brings us a little bit to our next part here that we're talking about now. You also have some experience in the paranormal realm, right?
Yes, I do. I have a lot of experience, more so than the average person.
And could you share with us where that started?
Um, well, back in actually being raised in the Catholic faith and going to Catholic school, we were always taught about demons and the devil. And I mean, Catholic Church, the old fashioned way was, the devil's watching you. And so I was always a believer that there was, evil spirits, bad angels. But it's just, a belief that you have growing up. And then even when I was younger, would sense a few things that others didn't sense. And sometimes I would see things, but I just kept it to myself in terms of maybe shadows or that there's no person around. But again, I just kind of kept it to myself. But in 1991, as a highway patrol officer, I was involved in an incident that really made me aware of demons. And by that, it was I made a stop on a vehicle on Comanche in Buena Vista, and there was three guys in the car, and I noticed that I was in a big black and white patrol car, and I noticed they were drinking alcohol. So I waited for a little bit just to see, and then finally one of them threw a beer can out the window, which right away gave me PC for the stop. So I make the stop, and I realize there's three of them inside the vehicle, and they've got beer cans. So I get the driver out initially, and I test him to see if he was under the influence of alcohol, which he wasn't, but he had an open container, so I wrote him a ticket. I told him he'd be fine, he'd be on his way, but I need to get the passengers out, give them a ticket because they have open containers as well. And I did that, and then the third guy came out, and I kind of recognized him as somebody from the Lamont area that I knew had a warrant for his arrest. But I just told him that I was going to write him a ticket. But what I didn't tell him was that I was going to run a warrant check because I knew he had a warrant, and it was my job. If he's got a warrant, you got to hook him up.
Yeah.
So I told dispatch, this is an individual checking for warrants, but it was in cop terms, which is uh, run what we would call run a 29 on him, which is checking for arrests, anything like that. And the guy was very fidgety. He didn't speak any English. He was very fidgety, very antsy, and I could tell he was probably under the influence of either cocaine, meth, something along those lines, and alcohol. And he was extremely just shaky. And he was looking at me, and I could see his eyes were very glassed over, and his pupils were dilated, and I could just tell it. He was speaking really fast, as somebody would be that's under the influence of some type of a control substance. So, um, as I'm writing the ticket, he starts edging towards me and then backing away, and then towards me and then backing away. And I thought, okay, this guy's going to run. And just as I began to realize that, he starts getting angry with me and wanted to know who I was calling on the radio. And I told him, don't worry about it. I'm just checking to make sure that I'm writing the ticket, just letting him know where I'm at, which, I wasn't being totally honest with him. And next thing I know, he steps back. I step towards him. And unbeknownst to me, at the moment, he caught me off guard and he swung forward. I thought as he's stepping back, I'm stepping towards him, but then he stepped back to gain some momentum and came back right at me. And I pushed my ticket book up in the air to try and block the punch. And he knocked it down, so my ticket book went flying. And then he turned to run, and I grabbed him by the shirt, and the shirt began to tear. And he didn't care. So I grabbed my radio out of my holster, and just as I was going to call for backup, because I was going to have what we call, we had a rabbit. He was running, and then the penal code violation would be a 148, which is it's a fight. And I knew I'd get backup. And just as I was keying the mic on the radio, he swung around and hit the mic. He hit the radio, and the radio went flying right out of my hands. Well, my hands were sweaty. It's 106 degrees. I'm wearing a full wool uniform, wool
And is
blend.
this daytime or nighttime?
This was at about 6 o'clock in the evening, but
Okay.
it was summertime,
Summertime, so it's
so it
still
was still daylight. It was hot. It's a field right there, and I was perspiring. He was perspiring, so the radio just slid right out of my hand, and it landed on the roadway and just shattered completely. I thought, oh crap, I got nobody that knows I'm out here. And I thought, I can let him go and go run to the car and get the radio, but then there's two more guys. Am I going to get jumped, or do I take this one down? And the macho side of me says, take him down. So, having had a little bit of wrestling experience, um, I used it from a reverse double leg takedown, and I picked him up from the legs around the thighs. I put my right shoulder in the middle of his back, and I drove him to the ground. And he hit the ground hard, and I could hear the other guy starting to get out of the car. And I thought, okay, here's where it's really going to get ugly. And the guy immediately rolled over. I'm on top of him. I'm trying to tell him he's under arrest. And he rolled over, and I'm on top of him, face to face, almost nose to nose, and I'm yelling at him that he's under arrest, and to quit resisting. But we're going back and forth in Spanish. He immediately, I know how to fight, and I know what I was taught, but he did something that I wasn't ready for. Um, and he broke free of my grip, and he grabbed me by the back of my head, and he grabbed my hair, and he pulled me forward. And I thought, what the hell is he doing? Because he's not hitting me. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he headbutted me, and I was not expecting that, and I was not taught that in training. He headbutted me and caught me right above my right eyebrow, and I got stung. I mean, it was hard. And in boxing and wrestling, when you get stung, grab on right out the sting of the hit, and try and hang on. So I did that. And then as I'm looking at his chest and I was trying to get all the stars out of my head, I realized his shirt was filled with blood. And I thought, oh crap, what did I do to him? How did I cut him? I'm going to be in trouble. And then I could feel this drip coming down my face. And then I look up at him and he's looking at me and his eyes just bugged out. And then I realized as the wind blew a little bit, I could feel the air hit my eyebrow. And I realized I was cut and I was split open. My right eyebrow was completely split in two. And it was all the way down to my eyelid. And then next thing I know is he grabs a rock off the side of the road and he proceeds to start bashing me in the face with it. And so now I'm bloody. I can't see out of my right eye. And we are fighting like you wouldn't believe.
And for anybody who's been cut in the face, I mean, your face pours blood for some
Yes.
reason. I have no idea why, but it
You, you have a
just
lot of
keeps running down,
you have
man.
a lot of blood vessels. And sometimes, just like in boxing, the cuts look really bad, and sometimes they are, but you are going to bleed like a stuck pig.
Yeah,
And you do, and I
exactly.
did. And I could feel the air coming through the cut. And next thing I know, he's throwing dirt on my face, trying to blind me. And then I thought, damn, I'd only been on like 2 years. And I thought, they teach you about these things, but you don't really expect it. It's like, not me, it's never going to happen to me. Well, that was a quick dose of reality because it did happen to me. And next thing I know, he's hitting me. And finally I said, screw it. And I started punching back. So it was on. The fight was on. And at one point, I I used a wrestling move, and he was trying to get up, and I got on his back from behind, and I was able to lock my legs around him, and I squeezed, pushing him down. I got him face down on the ground again, and I was right behind his head, and without thinking, I thought, okay, I got him, I'll get him in a chokehold. His head came back, bam, and he hit me again. This time he fractured my nose. So now my nose is bleeding. I'm swallowing blood, I'm bleeding from my eye. And he did it several times because he knew he had hit me and he got me good. My lip got split. I bit into my tongue. I'm swallowing blood. And that was just the start of the fight. So we fought. Afterwards, we were able to time it. We fought for 11 minutes straight in 106-degree heat. Towards the end, here's where the paranormal part comes in that made me a believer, is I had him on the ground, and he reached down, and I could hear his buddies coming towards me. And he reached down to grab my gun, and he was trying to pull my gun out. And I thought, shit, they're going to shoot and kill me right here. I'm going to have 3 guys on me. How am I going to fight 3 guys? I can't see out of my right eye. I'm not breathing well because there's blood in my throat and in my nose. I'm spitting up blood. My lip is busted open. Am I going to die here? And that's what I thought. I thought, this is it. This is where I die. I'm going to leave a 14-month-old son and a pregnant wife at home. She's going to become a widow. My son's never going to really know me. What am I going to do? And at that point, this guy did something that was so eerie. I've never forgotten the look. He turned around and looked at me after we had fought all this time. And his eyes were, and people can choose not to believe it, and that's fine. His eyes were completely black, just black. And he looked at me and smiled, and he told me in Spanish, he said, "Te voy a matar y aquí te voy a dejar," which translated to English is, "I'm going to kill you and I'm going to leave you here." And he smiled, and he just had saliva coming down his mouth. And in the way he said it was in a guttural tone that I don't even know that humans can actually speak that guttural. Maybe if you're an actor or something and you practiced it, but it was one of those you hear on movies where it's a guttural voice, like, "get out." But he said it in Spanish, and he told me that he was going to kill me right there. And I realized, son of a, this guy's not real. And having fought, and I was in pretty decent shape, he reached back, grabbed me by the back of my collar, and just threw me off with one arm. And I thought, there's no way in hell a human being without some type of help or superhuman strength is going to do that. Because I was locked around on him and I was tight. But he just threw me off like I was just a rag doll. And then I realized, God, what am I dealing with here? And at that point, I thought he's going to take off. No, now he jumped me to attack me. And he was going to, I knew then, he was yelling at the other guys to get my baton because the baton had come out of my holster, to get it and give it to him. And I thought, he's going to beat me to death. And then he went for the gun again. And I thought, okay, now they're going to shoot me or beat me to death with my own baton. And I was able to roll him off of me. I pulled my weapon out as the guys were coming towards me, and I yelled at him. I used some colorful language, but basically I pulled my gun and pointed it at him that, "You come near me, I'll shoot both of you right where you stand." And they looked at each other, and I've got the guy on the ground. The guy on the ground is yelling, to get me, to hit me with the baton. And I've got the gun. I told him the first one that reaches for the baton is dead. And then I reholstered my weapon. They backed off a little bit. I think they thought about it. And I reached down and I got him what is known as a rear naked chokehold, which is an MMA term. And I squeezed, and I had lost a lot of blood.
That's hard to get out of too. I mean,
Yeah,
once you're in that, you're pretty much.
it's it. One of us is going to die. And so I squeezed as tight as I could, but he was breaking free. I had lost a lot of blood. And afterwards in the hospital, they told me I had lost 5 pounds from just that fight, the adrenaline. My hands were cramping, and I was starting to lose the grip on this guy. I mean, I was losing it. I just didn't have the strength anymore. And I thought, and then I had a little voice in my head. And again, this is where people say, yeah, well, whatever. But I was always taught that angels don't have a male or they're not male or female. They're just spirits. And I heard a voice like in my head saying, "You believe in God? Why don't you ask God for help now?" And I just at that point I'm thinking, idiot, this whole time, at least I can give my goodbyes here. And I asked for help, and I'm squeezing this guy's neck, and I'm losing it. And at that exact moment, it's like I just regained strength. I mean, strength came back into my arms. I was able to reposition my chokehold, and I thought, I just thought, God, I don't want to die here on the side of the road. What a way to go. It's not the way I envisioned dying at the end of my life. And I squeezed as tight as I could. And as I'm squeezing, I hear somebody yell, "Officer, do you need help? Do you want me to call on the radio?" And I just said yes. And apparently somebody had stopped and grabbed my radio and called. Citizen was on the radio. And this guy's still trying to kill me because he's grabbing my gun. And I just pulled back and I heard a pop. And he kind of slowed down. And then I heard sirens, and everything after that kind of went. I don't remember everything exactly because my adrenaline was just drained. Apparently, what had happened was all the other police units started getting there. And the other guys got put on the ground, from what I remember, got arrested. I was taken off of this guy, but my arms had cramped around his neck, if you can believe that. Because I remember one of the officers yelling, "Hey, Lopez, let go of him. We got him." And I'm like, I can't let go. And it was, now looking back, it was kind of a joke, but they were saying, "No, let go." And I'm saying, "No, I can't let go. I'm cramped shut." And apparently I'd fractured his neck. And they had to unlock my arms from around his neck. And they threw me off to the side. And then next thing I know, he he was he got taken away. I'm not exactly sure if an ambulance took him or if they put him in the back of a police car, but he got taken away and I got taken in an ambulance. And let's see, I ended up with about 7 to 8 stitches to close the cut from above my eyebrow, which was split in two all the way down to my eyelid, fractured my nose, lip was split, my tongue was cut open, my jaw got popped extremely hard. My right eye was completely closed shut. It's like the size of a softball, my right cheek. My ear got hit several times, so my eardrum was partially just popped hard, damaged. And I didn't even realize when I had him in choke, he was biting my arm because I had bite marks all inside my arm. I had to get a tetanus shot. So I was told that they pumped me full of something because I was about to pass out from the lack of whatever your body needs. And I had lost 5 pounds. I was hospitalized. And the only thing I could remember was his look. His eyes were completely black, unlike any humans should be. And so it was then that it was afterwards I began to realize and question. And I spoke to a priest, and he said it's not uncommon for people that are high on drugs, for a wandering demon or a bad angel, because angels always wanted to know what it's like to be humans. And when this guy was so high on drugs that basically he was soulless, and a demon could have possessed him at that time. And that's why no matter how strong I was, he was going to be stronger. and it was told that, yeah, pretty much he was probably temporarily possessed. So it was after that that I found out later. It took some time, but that he eventually died of the damage I inflicted on him. And ever since then, I've been wanting to know, because even during that fight, for a few seconds, it's like I was in a different world. Yeah, I mean, they say you see the light, and I did. I don't know if it was just because it was hot or it was a light from the other side. But after that, since then, I've become very sensitive to voices, not like being schizophrenic, but times I hear things that others don't hear. I will look around just to see if they heard that, and nobody's reacting, or I've seen shadows and there's nobody around. Um, I sense things that nobody else senses. And I'm not afraid, as I became a part of a paranormal group, to go in 100 houses, because I'm thinking, I've seen the worst that you can see. So whatever's in this home or wherever, it just doesn't scare me.
Now, being a part of these paranormal groups and going into haunted houses and doing all the stuff you see on TV, it's very important to separate or in your group from what you see on TV, right? I think a lot of people kind of look at this stuff on TV and don't realize that there's like Hollywood's behind it,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
and and I mean, you can probably say something about this, but it's not every haunted house you go into that you actually find something, right?
No, a lot of times it's somebody's been watching too many movies
Yeah,
and reading too much, that every little noise they hear, oh my God, there's somebody out there, and I know this place is haunted. Find out the wind is blowing, there's a branch blowing outside your window, lady. It's just rubbing against your window. And, 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. An old house creaks, it settles, especially wooden homes. You walk on it, and the wood cracks and it creaks, and you may walk on it and hear the creaks, and later, as temperature changes, wood cracks.
you're a
It
pop.
creaks again. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's common. But somebody that's been watching too many movies, they think, oh my God, I can hear footsteps. And again, 9 times out of 10, you can tell what it is. And they want to believe that it's something paranormal or supernatural, and it's not. But, you can't tell them, because they will get enough people in there until finally somebody says, well, my God, that's exactly what it is. And, good and well, it's not.
And then you can't change that. They're set in their mind
Exactly. They,
that
they believe what they want to believe, and you can't change it. But yeah, I've been into many haunted homes, and yeah, most of them you can explain what's going on.
now what's the most intense moment in these paranormal investigations that you've done?
Went to a place called, I believe it was called Pico House in San Fernando. And it was an old home owned by a Spaniard, a big rancher, and it's in San Fernando, and actually, it's just down the street from San Fernando Cemetery, the one where Richie Valens is buried. And we were there one night with our group, and my sons wanted to go, so I said, "Okay, you boys want to go? Okay, let's see if you can handle this." So I took my sons, and they were, I don't know, like 16 and 13, something like that. And I thought, okay, you guys want to be macho about this. So actually, they were pretty good. But at night, everything is shut, all windows are closed, because we have to have a sterile environment if we're going to capture anything. And so I had one of my sons, 13-year-old, was on the staircase. And I just hear him, I'm up at the top of the staircase and off to the side near where there was some bookshelves. And I can see him, and I can see his shadow. My other son was near a bookcase. And my younger son says, "Hey, Dad, I can see a shadow coming up the staircase." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever." I'm just thinking he's just, he wants to see something. He goes, "Dad, I'm going to flash. I'm going to take a picture." I said, okay, Junior, take a picture, whatever you want to, Adam, go for it. And he took a picture. And then he says, Dad, I can sense something coming up the staircase. And this time he got very serious, and I could tell in his voice. And then he said, Dad. And I listened, and I could see where he's standing. And he said, Dad, it just went through me. And I could see a bit of a shadow, a very light, transparent type shadow that went right past him. And had to check right away. Adam, are you okay? He goes, yeah, Dad, but that was weird. It went through me. And long story short, is afterwards we got the picture. And there is an outline of something, it's like a man size coming towards him. And lo and behold, when we talked to the people that ran a historical society that ran, they weren't in there with us, said they often see a shadow of a man walking up the staircase. So the story is not telling them, we just kind of asked them what were some of the things that were happening there. Well, my son was on that staircase. And that was pretty intense because whatever it was walked right past him. And it went to the top. Well, lo and behold, that there was I guess for the term, a bandido that used to hang out at this Spanish home. He would go out, rob people, and then he would hide out there.
Which is a bandit, right?
Yes, a bandit. And he was a thief, a horse thief, everything else. And his clothes and everything that he was hung in were put in like a big chest after he was hung. And his holsters, gun, everything else. And it's put at the top of the staircase in a room right behind the staircase, up on top. Well, they say that they think he's walking towards getting his things back, and that he does it periodically because that's where the last thing he was wearing is at. So we didn't tell each other what we had seen. They told us, and we held off on my son's story. So we were able to piece it together that something walked past him, and it was walking up towards where his chest of his personal belongings were. Well, back then, at that time, your gun is like your heartbeat. Just like a police officer, that's a part of your body. You never give up your weapon, ever. Because you give up your weapon, it's like being naked. You know, that's your gun. That's a part of you. You have to have it to survive. So we think that that was being his weapon. That's what he was walking towards.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that you don't tell the people that you're investigating what you see
Exactly.
until you hear out everything they have to say, just so you can make sure that they're not just making things up
Exactly.
as you're saying things because they want it to be real. They wanted you to experience the same
Yes.
experience they did.
Because otherwise, then it's like, well, you told us the story before it happened. It's like a pitcher telling you, I'm going to throw you a curveball. Here it comes. Be ready for it. So you're sitting on it, waiting for the curve.
Exactly.
Well, you can't do that in this if you want to really get down to, did we experience something, or was it just already in our minds, preconceived? And so we didn't tell each other. But then afterwards, after when we went back, listened to everything, took the pictures, all kinds of stuff, we came back with the findings, and then they tell us, and then we piece it together, and then we can determine, okay, these noises, this is all it was. But in this case, that part of it, that was pretty legit.
Yeah, I mean, I've never experienced something that I maybe thought, you know, there's no other possible thing that could explain this. I have experienced some things that I'm just kind of like, what the hell is that, you know?
Exactly.
Um, and I did get into like the whole ghost hunting scene for a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, just because it seemed kind of cool,
Mm-hmm.
listening to the EVPs, the
Right.
electronic voice phenomenons that they have. Excuse me, but I the only thing that I can think of that I had no explanation whatsoever, and it kind of it made sense. Um, I was at my friend Jacob's house, and he and my other friend, uh, Murillo have mentioned that they've seen weird things. Um, Now Jacob's mentioned that he hears things like wrestling through the
Mm-hmm.
through the cabinet, sorry, in the kitchen, and the way his house is set up, the cabinets of the kitchen line up with the wall of the restroom. So he's like, sometimes I'm in the restroom and I hear things in the cabinet, or like
Mm-hmm.
somebody's sifting through all the dishes and like
Right.
looking for something in the cabinet. Now, being his friend,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of just like, oh yeah, that's interesting, like that's cool. I don't believe you that like that's really happening. Um, One night, I think Murillo was spending the night over at Jacob's house, and he has like a loft that you can go up the
Oh,
stairs
okay.
and hang out on top. And Murillo said he saw something like a shadow
Mm-hmm.
go up the stairs. And Jacob also said he saw that, but they didn't say anything to each other that night.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the next morning that they were like, "Hey, dude, I kind of saw some shit go up the stairs," and he's like, "Dude, I saw that too." And then that's when they were like, "What the fuck,"
Yeah.
Um, because they didn't initially say something to each other, and Jacob had seen it and didn't say anything about it and didn't bring it up to Murillo. And I think Murillo was the one that was like, "Hey, dude, I saw something last night." And then that's when Jacob was like, "Okay, that's the green light, dude. I saw the same thing."
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as far as the closet or the cabinet, sorry, um, I one time I went over to his house and I have a key to his backyard, and he has a restroom in the backyard, and I forgot what I was doing, picking something up from the garage, or um, I have some of my stuff there. So I was over there. I was like, man, I need to take a dump. So I go and I'm in the restroom, and I start hearing these noises in the closet or the cabinet. Sorry, um, and it sounds like somebody's looking for their cup or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like how
Yeah.
when you're going
Oh,
through the cabinets and
oh
you're like,
yeah.
oh, I only drink out of my cup, and you're just kind of
Exactly.
moving
Yep.
everything around.
Yep.
That's what I can describe it as, somebody just moving the dishes around in the cabinet. You can hear the doors kind of just open and shutting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, maybe his sister just got home. Didn't think much of it. When I got out, I noticed his sister wasn't there, and I texted her and I said, "Have you been home lately?" She's like, "No, I'm over here doing something else." And then I was like, "Dude, that's the noise he's been talking about.
Yeah.
That's the closets that
Yeah.
or the cabinets that he's been saying that been moving." Um, but I'm still a little skeptical to say that there was maybe some
Yeah.
paranormal activity. Considering that I can't really see it
Yeah.
happening, I'm just hearing through the walls. Um, it could be, you know, here we had a lizard, making noise
Yeah.
in the attic, and you're just kind of listening to all these tappings and stuff. So, um,
Even like, I mean, at night sometimes people, some, they will talk about they hear like a baby crying. You find that's a cat
it's a cat outside,
or
just
cats mating or fighting, and it's got that screech sound, but and it sounds demonic, but it's just two cats.
is that reminds me of this time I was spending the night at my friend Anthony's house, and they say that 3 a.m.
Yeah.
everything scary happens, and
Yeah.
so I think it was just a coincidence that it happened to turn 3 a.m. and we just start hearing these cats going crazy outside, and we're just like, "What the hell, dude?" That
Yeah.
and for anybody who's heard cats screaming like that, it's not pleasant. It's kind of
No.
off, like something you see in the horror films. They're
Yeah.
just like,
Well, that's why they associate the cats with witches, and but I mean in the movies.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah. I mean you see, and you hear, and then all those experiences, afterwards when I saw so many, bodies, um, it intrigued me, instead of, the average person would be sickened by it, but I was intrigued by it because then afterwards, even going to fatal accidents, if they had just happened, I would try and look around and sense, is that soul right here watching? So I tried to be as respectful as I could, knowing that 10 minutes ago this was a human being alive and now they're gone, or maybe they're here watching. I don't know. The ones that were eerie were the suicides, because those you just think, is their soul here watching, not realizing what they just did to themselves, thinking, crap, did I screw up? Was this really worth it? Because I've been to several hangings, and one, I say dumb kid because he was in love and girl turned him down after a while, and he put a shotgun in his mouth, and um, and then you think, it's like I wanted to tell that kid, idiot, what were you thinking? She's not worth it. But there's nothing I can do for you now. And it didn't bug me. So yeah, it's just like I was intrigued by the death. And where are they right now? Can they see me? Can they see me standing around? So yeah, so now when I go into like haunted homes or when I've investigated, it doesn't really bother me at all. Maybe because I've been through a lot, and it's just it's part of the paranormal world.
Now, now for the people that want to do like these paranormal investigations on their own, it does take some special equipment, and you do have to. It's almost scientifically done, right?
Yes,
As as much as people want to say like it can't be science, but you do use a scientific method
yes. I mean,
approaching these issues.
yeah. I mean, our tape recorder hears better than our ears ever will, and camera lenses don't diminish, and they're better than our eyes will ever be. So you need good equipment. If you're gonna pick up something, you need good equipment to listen, to play back. Um, for example, on one of the homes that we went into, it was the home of the Spaniard that we were talking about. And I was, with about 6 or 7 white guys who didn't speak any Spanish. And they kept asking and then playing back on the tape recorder, are you here? Can you hear us? Can you see us? And it was kind of funny because I said, guys, if they were Spaniards, chances are they spoke Spanish. Why don't you let me do it in Spanish and see if we come up with something? And it was kind of like, duh. So, I did ask in Spanish, and I said, hay alguien aquí, which is translated, is there somebody here? And then I said, hay alguien que quiera hablar con nosotros, is there somebody who wants to talk with us? And then we played it back, and, we let it go for about 40 minutes. I asked many questions in Spanish. I was getting answers for everything.
Oh man.
And I mean, clear cut answers. And there was one answer, but it was a female. And the answer was, aquí estamos, which is, we are here. Queremos hablar con ustedes. We want to speak with you. And then the voice, it transitioned from female to male. It went from, aquí estamos. Queremos hablar con ustedes. So it went from female to male, which either there was more than one spirit there, or it could have been a demonic spirit, because they can change. They can mimic a grandpa that you love your grandpa very much, and they suck you in
Now,
because they're talking to you in a voice you're comfortable with.
I think the best example I like to use is from the film "Deliver Us from Evil,"
Yes.
where the spirit starts talking in what was it, the little kid's voice,
Yes.
and then you hear. Um, I think it mimics some other voice as well, and the cop's just like, "Oh crap, what's going on?"
Yes.
Um,
It's in The Exorcist too, when the younger priest is talking and he envisions his mom, and she's telling him, "Why did you put me here?" Which was in the rest home that she didn't want to go to, which played upon his conscience and it his guilt feelings. But like the older priest tells him, it's don't listen to it. Pretty much it's messing with your mind.
and based off like the stuff that I've read, and maybe like the common like sayings that a lot of them here is they want to put you up against yourself, right?
Yes, yes,
They want you to go up against all the bad stuff or all the guilty feelings,
yes,
all the things that lay heavy on your conscience, and um, pretty much you end up defeating yourself, right?
exactly. And then after that, and then a lot of people they start getting into the Ouija boards because, oh, I want to talk on a regular basis. I am a believer that the Ouija boards open doors to realms that you might not be able to close, or something can attach itself. But that's how you're inviting it in. 9 times out of 10, when people say they're possessed or they have a negative attachment, it's because you invited it in. You know, um, it's like you're opening a door downtown in the seediest part of town, and you may have, an apartment there. Something. You open your door. Okay, anybody out there? Come on in. In your mind, you're thinking only the positive people will come. And when you open these doors to other realms, you're thinking, oh, only the good spirits will come. There's good spirits, there's bad spirits, and you don't know which one is going to come in and wants to stick around. And you just open the door by inviting it. And those Ouija boards do that. I'm a firm believer that my belief, anybody listening doesn't have to believe, but you're opening the doors that you may not be able to close. So you have to know what you're doing. It's not a matter of just, okay, well, I'm going to go investigate a haunted house and I'm going to take a camera. Okay, well, be prepared for what you're doing because you just don't know what's going to attach itself. So, is it scientific? In my belief, yes. It's scientific, it's paranormal, it's supernatural, it can be really religious in nature, it can be demonic in nature. But you have to know what you're doing. Don't start playing around with things you just don't know about. You don't take a deep sea pole to a little creek and fish for trout with this, deep sea pole. You got to know and be prepared with the right equipment before you go in and start playing around with these things because you just don't know who you're talking to.
So give us a quick like rundown of what the typical like go bag would be for some kind of paranormal investigation.
You need a good tape recorder. You need a good camera. You need an EMF detector. That's an electromagnetic field detector, which because many times these spirits, whatever you want to call them, they need energy. And that's why a lot of times, I'll just give an example. In that house that we went to, I had 3 batteries for my camera. And each time I went to, my batteries were full. Each of them should have had at least 8 hours of time. With 3 batteries, that was more than enough time for what we were only going to be there like 6 to 8 hours. The first one, as I started talking and filming, within a matter of a half hour, it was almost down to zero. I'm thinking, what the hell? These things are. So I thought, okay, whatever. So I took it off, put the next one on. It lasted maybe another half hour or so, and it started to drain. And all the equipment we had, because the guys I was with had top line equipment. These guys were really, they had good stuff, good equipment, and it was draining everything. And so you need excessive. You cannot have too many batteries. Good camera, good EMF detectors, motion detectors, good microphones. You need really good microphones to be able to pick up um, good
Sorry,
sound quality.
that's across the street.
I was beginning to think, what the hell?
Yeah, that's going on across the street. The noise you guys might hear in the background or music, um, is just going on across the street. I guess they're having a party or something on Wednesday
But that's
at
yeah,
noon.
yeah, really. But you need good. That's the equipment. That's the basic on equipment that you need. Good microphones, digital recorders, good cameras, um, and you're gonna need a good laptop. Um, so yeah, it's not gonna be cheap, but motion detectors. You need all those things if you're gonna do a good thorough job. And even then, afterwards, you're gonna be thinking, oh, I could use this, I could use that, I could use another digital recorder, another camera. There's always a lot of toys that you want to buy.
I think it's just like writing a report. At the end of the report, after you turned it in, you're like, "Dang, I forgot to put
Yeah,
this in there, and
exactly.
that would have made it way better."
Yeah, that's yeah. There's one. The my friends went to the. It's a house in Cincinnati. I believe it's in Ohio, somewhere in Ohio, and the Velixa house, and that was, I believe, in the 1920s. It was an axe murder, killed like 6 people, and just he axed them all, kids, parents. I mean, just let them have it with an axe, split everybody up. Did it in the middle of the night. When my friends went over there and spent the night there, I wasn't able to go. They spent the night there, and they brought back some recordings. And the recordings, you have to listen closely, but you can hear the scream of little girls, high pitched screams. And I mean, these were death screams. So the only thing we were able to figure out was that one of the little girls woke up as her little friend was getting axed, and she lets out a death scream. Oh, and you can tell it's not demonic scream; it's a little girl screaming. But she was witnessing. That's the conclusion we came to. She was witnessing her friend getting axed to death, and then within a matter of seconds, it stops. She stops because then the axe came on her. And in one of the recordings, we also picked up it's a human guttural slash demonic scream of the guy almost enjoying what he was doing. It's almost like he's axing somebody and he's liking it.
and
It was nasty to hear that scream.
and these recordings, are they like archived somewhere, or
Yeah,
do,
actually, I have them on my laptop, and
okay?
I can get those for you.
Yeah, we might play a few of those, just to um, see what they can hear.
Exactly, and I don't want to put all of it out there, but you'll hear it. You'll hear it, and it's just I have played it for others, and it's funny. They look at each other, and it's like, oh my god, I got goosebumps, and their eyes like bug out. It's like I heard that, I heard that, and sometimes I won't tell them what you're going to hear. Just tell them, look, just listen. Tell me what you hear, and then they look at each other, and it's like, oh my god, what was that? And then afterwards, I tell them,
N-
and they it's like they want to hear, but they don't want to hear it again.
And so, what would you say you have to go through some kind of experience or experiences, to believe in something like this? Or
I think so. I think you have to go through something that's almost PTSD involved, post traumatic stress disorder, somehow that you will have experienced something that where you're at the edge, maybe of life and death. And I know I was when I got into that fight. To me, it opened a door that I will never be able to close, no matter how hard at times that I've tried. Yeah, to answer your question, I think you have to be right at that edge of life, almost into the next dimension. It's like you can see the door, and maybe you've seen partially into it. You didn't step through it, obviously, because you're still here. I'm still here, but I've seen that other side, and so I can see. I mean, when I was still a highway patrolman, I would drive through the old Union Cemetery here in Bakersfield, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know why. I felt the need to. And as a sergeant, you patrol by yourself, because you just monitor the radio and you listen to what the officers are doing, and they patrol together. But um, I've told that to a few people. Wow, what the hell are you doing going through a cemetery 3 or 4 by yourself? And it's like, it's just the need to do it. My oldest son now is an LAPD officer, and he kind of, having heard the stories from me, he's into it now. And I've taken him to places, and um, and now he's like, his name is Nicholas. And he's like, hey, Dad, now that I'm an LAPD officer, I find myself being pulled towards things like that. He said, now I listen to the story because one of my training officers told me that he was into it. And so he goes, we talked all night on graveyard shift about everything. And he says, I'm really now more enlightened to that. You having been what you went through, that he said they have a story of a home where LAPD officers kept getting called. And one officer, he said, was leaving the house and the family had told him, we hear these things all the time. And he said the officers had to go through there because they kept hearing things upstairs. He goes, and this one officer said as he was leaving the home, a Bible came flying out from the door and hit him in the back of the head. True story. He says, and he goes, now I find myself driving by that house, wanting to know what's there, what's in there. And yeah, it's like you have to experience something for that to be able to see that other side.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I really do think, to get back to your question, you have to experience something for that door to open up.
Now, along with that, have you ever heard somebody else's experience and maybe thought like, I don't know about this guy, you know?
Yeah, sometimes you hear things again of people that have heard too many stories, and then they come up with their own. But, and then some, it's like, well, this is what I saw. This is, and they can tell you things that only somebody that's been through it will know. And then it's like, wow, I think this person is legitimate. Um, and the people that have been in car accidents where somebody died and they experienced it. I had a former student where her mom was killed on Comanche Road, and she had to take her sister out of the car, but she remembers seeing her mom, who was deceased, in the vehicle on the driver's side. And her mom took the brunt of the impact. And this young lady, the eerie thing about this, I'm the one that worked the accident. I'm the one that covered her mom up, and I didn't know that. So it's years later that I'm teaching, and she's a student of mine. And she one time asked me, "Did you ever work an accident on this particular location?" And I said, "Yeah, there was this and this and that." And I vaguely remember, yeah. And then she looked at me and said, "That was my mom." So it was years later, it all came back. And so she went through it, and she said that she, having lost her mom, she now experiences things and what she's been through. And so, yeah, some stories are like, no, but she factually could put everything together and told me that what she sees and that she hears. And she says that she would actually go visit her mom at the graveside. And it was almost like she could hear her mom talking to her. And not just like, well, I heard it in my heart, she's passing, messages, but she goes, I actually can hear my mom talking to me. And it was like that night, she said, in the vehicle, her mom was telling her, I took this for you so that you would live. So her mom, somehow the accident occurred that her mom took the impact. So that's, I can't make that up. That really happened. So, yeah.
And so, like, what would you say to people who may like take these experiences that you have to share, or that anybody else has to share, and they just kind of go like, I don't really believe in ghosts, or they say something like, well, you don't really have anything that you can really prove it with.
Um, there's always going to be skeptics, and I can't force him to believe it. I can only tell the story. And as far as the incident, um, I used a lot of vitamin E to clear up the scar above me, but I still have a scar above my right eyebrow that goes through my eyebrow and it's a little bit down below. And every time I look in the mirror, I see that scar. So, I can tell these people, look, here's a scar. This is where he hit me. And this is the eye that he tried to smash and close up. So you can choose not to believe the story of what I felt and saw, but the incident happened. Because actually, the incident was recreated on Real Stories of the Highway Patrol. So it was on national TV. There used to be a story like Cops. There was one called Real Stories of the Highway Patrol. And I had to reenact the entire scene because nobody was out there and the guy obviously is no longer around. So I had to be myself and play myself. And I do have the video of that. So I have it, and it was on Real Stories of the Highway Patrol, and it was called the Officer Alfredo Lopez incident in Kern County, California.
So that'd be something interesting they can look up and
And the
kind
thing,
of.
well, no, I didn't mean to cut you off, but they didn't allow me to talk about the paranormal part. They didn't want to hear that. And when we did the scene, they put a little bit of blood on me, but they said, Lopez, you got to remember, this is a 5 o'clock in the evening show. People are watching TV, and the kids are watching. So we can't really put all the blood, the fake blood, all over your face like when it really happened, because people are going to be eating dinner, and we don't want to freak them out. So it was like we want to know, but we don't want to know.
But in the title, they have real
Yeah,
stories
real stories of the Highway
of the Highway
Patrol.
Patrol, the real stories. But we're gonna.
And actually, one of the officers had to seek counseling after that because the first officer on scene saw my face, and uh, there was actually two, and they had never seen an officer's face beaten like that. They didn't actually. They said they didn't recognize my face, and it was a mess. And they just, my nose was slightly crooked, and my eye was shut, and there was blood everywhere. My shirt was ripped, my uniform shirt, and I had blood all over my face, my hair. I was dripping blood from they could see the tissue inside of my eyelid, my eyebrow, and said they had never seen an officer like that. So when Real Stories of Highway Patrol filmed it, they said, well, we can't do all that because it's a show. But I just remember seeing the look on my wife's face when they took her to the hospital, and she looked at me, and her eyes just, it was freaky to see her eyes because she immediately, first it was like, and then she started crying because, she saw me leave during the day, happy go lucky, I was in plain clothes, and she sees me with my shirt cut up, ripped off, and my face a bloody mess. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not what he looked like when he left today. That was reality, that this is part of the job.
And I think for all the people who kind of know somebody or are with somebody that is a law enforcement officer, or maybe a firefighter, or other
Hmm.
other type of jobs that may involve really high risks and stuff. I think they understand the kind of
Yeah,
stress that goes along with you know
yeah,
going to work.
exactly. And I may or may not come home tonight. And I never had to deal with it from that side. Although now I kind of do, my son being an LAPD officer. But if you're spiritual in any way, you just put it in God's hands. And so, my wife had to deal with it for almost 15 years, not knowing. And then after that incident, and then later I was involved in a really bad car accident, which is why now I have a defibrillator in my chest next to my heart from a bad where I ended up hitting a canal wall. So, yeah, they never know if you're going to come home or not. But you don't dwell on it. You, the officer, don't dwell on it. It's part of the job because part of the oath that you take when you're sworn in is, I will lay down my life rather than swerve from the path of duty. And that's, when you really think about it, it's like, I'm willing to die in this job if I have to. And you say it, you swear to it, and then you just deal with it. I buried 4 friends. The famous incident where Officer Richard Maxwell was shot and killed, who was a friend of mine, and he was shot and killed in off of Norris Road. And he was a good friend who had also been a former teacher. And so, there was him and Saul Martinez, who pushed another officer out of the way, and the car hit him, killed him. Dave Manning, who was killed on a motorcycle on the way home. And then there was actually just a few months ago, Officer Richard Taggart, who was a friend who the demons finally got to him and he took his own life. He was retired now, but he'd been in Vietnam. He was what they call a grunt. He was in the jungles, and he saw a lot of nasty stuff. And then that Rich Taggart was at where Rich Maxwell was killed. He was the first one there. So Maxwell died while Rich was holding him, and Rich dealt with that. And so then Rich finally, that was it. So you deal with it.
I think having a lot of friends that were in the military, um, they could tell you, though none of them I think have been to actual war. Uh, they have been through situations where they have seen some bad
Hmm.
stuff, and they would say that you don't think about dying
No,
because that's not something you are trained to think about. That's not something you uh, can think about. You have other responsibilities that are more important to the
exactly.
to the success of what you guys are focusing on right at that moment.
Yeah, and they pretty much tell you the first day of the academy, they drill it into you, and then they don't dwell on it. They just tell you, look, you do something stupid, you screw up, or you just get hit, you get killed. There's somebody in another class that will take your spot. You are a badge number. That is all you are. Now your family loves you, but for somebody else that's taking your position, they said, so you just, it is what it is, and you deal with it. Don't dwell on it, but you know what you're getting yourself into. And if you can't handle it, don't waste our time. Don't waste your time. Right now is the time to get up and leave. And ultimately, you usually have one or two people. Because what they will do is show you pictures of officers that have been killed. And it shows their pictures lying on the side of the road. Or they were shot, whatever. And some people, they realize, oh my God, I thought I was just going to write tickets.
Yeah, and I think one thing that my friends have mentioned is you don't want the guy who's thinking about dying next to you
Exactly.
because that guy doesn't have your back. That guy's too
Exactly.
worried about thinking about dying. that
Exactly. He's too worried about, I don't want to die, I don't want to get hurt. You can't think like that. I'm going to work, I'll do my job, I'll do it the way I'm trained. And if by chance something happens, well, I've got insurance, I'm taken care of, my family's taken care of. It is what it is, but I will fight to the end to survive. But I don't go thinking, I'm going to get shot and killed today. You don't dwell on it. You can't.
exactly.
And the officers that, go to, that are seeing live action, they're not thinking about it. If your buddy gets hit, you bring him back. If he blows up, nothing you can do for him. He's gone. You got to move on. You can't sit there and cry about it.
And and you would say like the The gunshots don't stop.
No,
You
no.
gotta worry about what you gotta do now.
Yeah, I mean, we were actually trained that if an officer, that the reason we a lot of us carried the same weapon the way the department issued was that if your partner goes down and he's incapacitated or dead, you can always reach into his holster and grab his magazines that are fully loaded, and you have more ammunition. And that's unfortunately that's how you have to think about it. Because if he's dead and gone, nothing you can do. But then you got to survive. So use what the equipment he's got to
Yeah,
save
exactly.
yourself. And that sounds cold. It sounds uncompassionate, but it is what it is.
And I think a lot of people that don't deal with these types of jobs kind of have a hard time understanding the kind of realistic approach
Hmm.
to a lot of the things that you have to do. Um, for example, if you watch like all the war movies and you watch all the Band of Brothers or things like
Hmm.
that, um, there's a lot of shit going on at one time.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of shit that if you just tried to focus on everything, uh, you get lost in it. You get lost in all the stuff that is happening, and you are gonna lose your life
Yes.
if you don't stay focused.
Because if you start dwelling on, oh my God, I'm in a dangerous position. I'm this. I got to hide. You got to let your training kick in because you're trained. And in law enforcement, you are trained and trained over and over to the point that it becomes muscle memory and certain how to, retrieve your weapon
And
and all of it. Because there's times that when there was a gun in a vehicle, before I even knew it, my weapon was out, pointed at this guy's yelling, "Put your hands where I can see him, put your," and not realizing I didn't even realize I pulled my weapon. But you're trained so much to take it out of the holster, what we call clear leather. And I've got it pointed. I'm yelling at him, "Don't move. Put your hands where I can see him. Put him on the steering wheel." Something that if you start dwelling, oh my God, maybe, then your thoughts are gonna cross. You're gonna get jumbled up. You're not gonna react the way you were trained, and you need to react the way you're trained so that you know what the hell to do.
I think if we put it in like a sports analogy, some of the best plays or the best saves are just kind of
Hmm.
reactionary type plays or saves where this is not how it was supposed to go according to the plan, but
Exactly.
I kind of did
Hmm.
what I was trained to do. Um, I kind of just work my feet, and then somehow you get the ball somewhere, or you stop the ball from going into the goal, or whatever sport you watch.
Yeah, I mean, when these
And
guys jump over the fence to grab a home run and they bring it back, they're running, they see the ball, and they're timing it as best as they can. They're not thinking, am I going to nail the wall? Am I going to hurt my shoulder?
they're
They
thinking, "Hey,
realize,
how do I get my glove to
yes,
that ball right there?"
I'm getting paid millions of dollars and I got to try and get that damn ball
So I'll
from
run up
going
this
over.
wall real fast. I'll
Exactly.
jump off the side here.
And they dive, I mean, that's why they dive into the stands. They're not thinking about getting hurt. They're jumping, they're going after the ball. That's what they get paid to do. Cops get paid to take people to jail, to arrest, work accidents, sometimes to tell a parent your child is deceased. Normally the coroner's office does that, but I've been on a few where I had to do that. People drive up to an accident scene when there's a fatal, and you got to tell somebody, you can't go into the car. Your son. If this is this your son, you show him a driver's license. Ma'am, I regret to inform you that your son is deceased. Somebody's got to tell him. So you can't let it burden you, and you can't. If you're too scared to do the job, then you shouldn't be doing the job. You do as you're trained, and it will come out. But you can't jumble your thoughts. That's what will get you hurt. Because then you're not doing what you were trained to do. You're running scared, and you just can't be scared.
And now, kind of tying that back to the paranormal and stuff. I think as you're investigating, you're not thinking about all the things that are actually being done. You kind of think more about it when you're finished with the investigation and you're
Exactly.
going over the stuff and you're kind of like, oh, I kind of remember feeling something at
Hmm.
this moment. Um, and then the camera actually captures something, or
Oh yeah, there's many times I went back to the fatal accident scenes to do follow up, and then I walk around the scene, and I will, sometimes I may be taking measurements, going over my measurements because maybe the accident was at 1 in the morning, and the wind was blowing or it was raining. I just didn't get the best of measurements, and I want to redo them. And I'll go out there when it's daylight and walk around and just trying to get a sense. And yeah, sometimes you will, it's not a windy day, but you feel a breeze, or it's like, you might even hear a hello, or I'm here. Maybe others don't, but I was more open to that afterwards, after the incident I had been involved in. So there was times I could hear things. And I saw the ghost of a little boy when I was on duty off of 58 near Keene towards the Tehachapi. A little boy, you know, I can get into that a little bit where um, I was bored and I was hungry, so I went and got a sandwich, chips, and a Gatorade, and I drove down a dirt road off of 58, which was in cop turns, that was my beat, my area. And so I drove down a dirt road just to see what was out there. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking around, there's just a little boy on a bicycle right in front of my patrol car. Right? He just was there. It's not like he appeared out of nowhere. It's just he did and he didn't. I was just kind of glancing side to side. Next thing I look forward and then he's there. But it's an old Stingray bike, the old Stingray with the banana seat, which is something that is from like the 60s. And this was in the year 2000 when I saw this. And he's wearing Levi's folded up little cuffs on his pants, flat top, and a little striped t-shirt with what we used to call the sissy bar on the back end. And he's right in front of me, but yet there's no homes out there. It's just a dirt road around a mountain. And right away I'm thinking, what the hell's this kid doing out here? Where's his mom and dad? As a parent, that's how you think. And then I'm thinking, I'm trying to get around this kid. Well, does he not hear me? I'm right behind him in a patrol car. I got big antennas and lights, and so I start to roll down my window, and I'm gonna pretty much like, "Hey, be careful! Get out of the way!" Like a father would to his son. And as we turned the corner, he just faded out. Just faded. I mean, just went from there to just faded and was gone. And so I stopped my patrol car right away, and I thought, "Oh God, please tell me I didn't run over this kid." And I knew I hadn't, because there was no thump thump. So, but I stopped the car and I get out and I think, oh crap, I need to look under the car real quick. So I look, I put it in park, put the park brake, emergency park brake on, get out, there's nothing under my car. To the left side, it's a mountain. To the right side, it's down an embankment. It was about, I'd say 30 feet in width, this dirt road. So there's no way he went from the middle of the road to either side. He just didn't have the time. And I looked down the embankment, nothing. And I walked around. Well, the one thing that should have been on the ground was bicycle tire tracks.
tread marks.
Yeah, exactly. There were none. The only marks was my car. There was no tread mark from a bicycle. And I looked around. I must sit out there for a half hour just, where's this kid? Okay, there's got to be a logical explanation for this. I have none because I never found the kid. I don't know who the kid was. I don't know where he came from. I don't know where he went. I know that I saw him. And to this day, I don't know. I know where the dirt road is. I've been back there maybe a couple of times off duty, and then now that I'm retired, I don't know.
I think you mentioned a good point though. Uh, you're more open to this.
Yes.
You're more open to something else. And do you think you have to be more open to something else? Do you think somebody who may not believe in, say, anything, or is atheist, or doesn't believe in any kind of ghosts or spirits, do you think they're going to have a hard time finding something?
I think so because one, their mind is closed, and they are the belief they don't exist. They don't exist. So even if this full apparition appeared in front of them and went and disappeared, they'd be, oh, my eyes are playing tricks. My sugar's low. I'm diabetic. I just, I need some sugar. I didn't sleep well. It was a dream. They're not going to be. But for me, the door is open. So I sense, and I think the other side, whatever you want to call it, the other dimension, they can sense those of us that are open. And sometimes they want to be recognized or just remembered.
So that they know exactly who to
Exactly.
target or who to
And it's not going to freak us out.
come out to.
Because I think if they were to come up to the, average Joe, citizen, Joe citizen might crap his pants. Whereas some of us, we see it and it's like, okay, I recognize you. I see you. Um, and I think sometimes you have lost souls that want to be recognized for whatever reason. Maybe this little boy died out there. Maybe, he was abandoned out there. I hate to think of maybe a pedophile took him out there and after was finished with him, then just killed him and buried him somewhere out there and he was never found again. And he knew it's not going to freak me out if I see him. Maybe it's his way of telling me I'm out here somewhere. Can you look for me? Look for my body, bones, whatever. Yeah, I think they tap into those of us that are open. And I think that's why sometimes I see things or, whether it be a shadow figure or something, because they know we're more open to it and it doesn't freak me out. I don't think, oh my God, I gotta open the window, I'm gonna turn TV, I'm gonna turn all the lights on. Some people will freak out and do that. I'm like, okay, I see you.
Now, that kind of wraps it up. I think for what I was looking to talk to you about, do you have anything else you want to kind of mention?
Um, if you are interested, keep your mind open. My advice is don't mess with Ouija boards. Some people will still do it. Some people will make up their own. But just remember, you can open up a door that you may not be able to close. Sometimes you can just be a negative attachment, and you don't want that. You don't need that in this world. Um, but if you are interested, just be open, be aware, and know that as many angels that are out there, I believe in guardian angels, but I also believe the fact that there was a Lucifer with his bad angels, demon angels, whatever you want to call them, and they're out there as well. So you just need to be careful what you ask for.
So don't go around trying to ghost hunt the wrong way.
Exactly, exactly. Asking for, well, there's a demon out there. Can you come talk to me too? They're out there. Believe me, they're out there. Don't ask for them. Don't invite them in because I'm a firm believer that you have to invite them in for them to really come after you. Now, are there such things as temptations? Absolutely. But I truly believe God gave you, all of us, the ability to choose right or wrong. And you know what's right and you know what's wrong. Deal with the consequences.
Makes sense. Now, I don't think this is the last time we're going to hear from you. I do think we're going to have you on a few more times.
Absolutely.
You seem very interesting, and you got a lot to share. But that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Um, and I can't wait to have you back.
I can't wait to be back. It feels good to be able to put it out there now in this world of social media because not many people know that story. And it's a story that I would like to put into a book at some point in time.
Sounds good.
Thank you for asking.